Welcome back to 100 Days of 6-Minute Stories. My name is Andrea Kwamya, and I want us to have a talk. Now, I am still going to tell you a story, but I actually was planning to tell something else, but recently I've been talking to my friends a lot about what's happened to Ahmaud Berry and Sean Reed, and it's been weighing really heavily on my mind. Now, this is not to say that uh, violence against black men is anything new. It is not. And so why is everyone talking about this right now? The reason why people are talking about this is that majority of us are sequestered in our homes and are trying to do what we can to stay mentally vigilant, yet there are still violent attacks against unarmed individuals, and it's something that is very taxing mentally and emotionally on the black community. So when I was a kid, obviously, being African and knowing where my family is from Ghana and Uganda, I think if I admit to myself that I didn't really understand that me being African and me being black were the same thing. I didn't feel like I shared a history. So that is so much further from the truth, obviously, but as a 7-year-old, 7 to 10, I don't think I really understood. I didn't get the connection. When you go into late elementary school, middle school is when you start talking about um, slavery and social justice in depth, and you start watching videos about it. Now, we grew up watching Roots all the time, so yes, I had a knowledge about it, but there was something about watching videos that showed the realities and the truth of lynching, of um, of punishment, of actual people being sold when you're the only black person in the room and you look around and none of your friends look like you. I remember I was in the middle of class in 7th grade and I ran out of the classroom crying. People even laughed at me because they didn't understand what I was crying about. Like, this wasn't anything new, this wasn't new news. But the thoughts going through my mind, such an innocent child's thought, is that if I had lived back then, I wouldn't have any of the friends I have today. I wouldn't be allowed to talk to any of the people that I talk to. As I got older, I realized the even scarier complexity of this whole situation is that I am black. My brother is black. My father is black. It's something that we cannot run away from. It's something that we can't hide. We don't want to hide, but the dangers out there continue to loom. When I was in high school, my parents were deciding whether or not to stay together, and it was a difficult time. So I remember my boyfriend would sometimes just let me sit parked in his car just down the road from my house. So I wasn't really away, but I was escaping a little bit from my personal reality. And I lived in the middle of the suburbs, a very white neighborhood, and I didn't even think about any of that stuff. It's just where I grew up. It just was part of who I was. And my street was on a cul-de-sac with developed houses, and there was a little street adjacent to the corner of my house, which if you drove to the end of it, there was a dilapidated house that was being torn down and the land was being sold off. So we would usually park around there and just sit and talk. And I remember one day a cop drove up to the car. It was an empty street, there was no one doing anything. I wasn't even old enough to have my license yet. Um, or I was, but I didn't have my license. I had barely turned 16. And so I didn't have any ID on me because I was just down the street from my house. So the cop comes and knocks on my side of the window and asks what we're doing. He starts asking if he can search the car. Now, when people do something that's illogical, I can become a little bit defiant. And I was just like, we're not showing you anything. What is your cause for coming up to us when we are not doing anything? We're sitting here. And he was suggesting that we were smoking weed and doing X, Y, and Z. So he finally gets me to tell him my name. And I say, my name is Andrea Kwamya, because my boyfriend was telling me, like, please just cooperate so that we can go home. But I was really riled up. I was really frustrated that someone would look at me with suspicion based off of no other reason than me were sitting there. And most likely I was crying more than anything. I wasn't even doing anything. And he goes, oh, Kwamya, oh, I know your older sister. I went to school with your older sister. And I said, so now because you know someone in my family, you realize that there is no logic in your harassing me? That day I felt frustration, and I was acting out in frustration, which obviously now that I'm older, I realize wouldn't even be safe for me to do. I can't talk back. I live in a big city. I don't live in a small town where I can use my name in protection. But this is what a lot of perpetrators are doing. They're using their connections in protection for their actions, in protection for their violence. And it's something that, like I said, this is not new. Only thing that is new is that more voices are rising up, because the fact that we are afraid to go outside and go on a run, that I don't want my brother to go out and work on Instacart, not because I'm as worried about the virus, but I'm more worried about someone targeting him, is insane. So this was not the story that I planned to tell you, but I had to speak about what was on my heart, because there is no way that any of this is going to get better if we keep justifying bigotry and stupidity in this way. So I hope that you all understand my need to express myself in this way, because it's something that many of us have to live with, this fear and this discomfort every day. And if you really are an ally, then you'll acknowledge our pain, and you'll understand that it's not something anyone does for attention when we speak up like this, and that the mother and the siblings of these men that continue to be targeted do not deserve to have their pillows full of tears every night. I'll see you tomorrow.